We're good. All right, thanks everyone for coming. I'm excited about this session because one of the striking takeaways that I've had so far from this event is that hard problems have not gotten easier to solve. For 30 years, we've been trying to figure out data quality. We've been trying to figure out things like master data management. And with the AI boom, we have lots of shiny objects that need us to solve those hard, old problems more than ever before. So I think this session will be particularly instructive for folks. I had a good conversation with Malcolm yesterday about some of the things that Prophecy is doing in this area, and I think you'll agree it's helpful for companies that need to get the data right in order to enable all the exciting things on top. So Malcolm Hawker is an experienced thought leader and data management professional. He has experience as a Dun & Bradstreet architect, as a Gartner analyst, so he's worn a few hats here that I think are very relevant to the topic at hand. He was a Gartner analyst for master data management. And today he's going to be talking about the future of MDM. So Malcolm, why don't I hand over to you?
Awesome. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it. As many of you may know, I'm kind of active online and LinkedIn, and I produce a lot of content. So I'm recording myself. Thank you all for attending. It's my honor to be here. As Kevin mentioned, my name is Malcolm, ex-Gartner analyst. My name is on the last 3 MDM Magic Quadrant documents and a boatload of other research authored at Gartner. While I was there, I was given the distinct honor of speaking with no fewer than 1,500 CDOs and CIOs, VPs of data and analytics about challenges related to MDM, data governance, data strategy. So what you're going to see today is an amalgam of that, but it's also an amalgam of experience that I had in the field. I ran the IT organization of a $2 billion publicly traded company. I've implemented MDM. I've implemented data governance. I was just telling a story. The first 2 times I implemented MDM, they were dismal failures. Dismal failures. A lot of the things I know about what not to do with MDM came from the school of hard knocks. I've been a vendor. I work for a vendor now. I've been a consultant. I ran my own consulting shop for a number of years, consulting around MDM. Been an analyst. So every hat you can wear in this space, I've worn it. As has Dan. It's good to see you, Dan. And others in the room. Again, I'm so thrilled you're here and for others online as well. We're going to talk about the future of MDM today. I originally designed this as a 45-minute presentation while at Gartner. So I'm actually excited. We've got an hour, so there's going to be a decent chunk of time for questions. But what you're going to see is I'm really passionate, and when I get wound up about stuff, I tend to ramble. So hopefully I don't suck up all the time, and there's no Q&A. I also think that some of the things that Kevin just said are really, really relevant. There are really difficult challenges we haven't figured out, and it bothers me that we haven't figured them out. So some of the things you're going to hear me talk about today, I'm going to be killing some sacred cows. So hopefully some of the things that I talk about and maybe even rant about a little bit aren't too sacred, but I think that our field desperately needs new ways of thinking about things, new ways to solve old problems. Yes, MDM has been around a while, but there are new ways of addressing MDM and thinking about MDM we're going to talk about. So every now and then, there are new shiny objects that Kevin mentioned that roll around. And every time they roll around, on about a 4 to 5 year cycle, they kill MDM, in case you haven't known, right? You know, at a while, Hadoop was going to kill MDM. Big data was going to kill MDM. Snowflake's going to kill MDM. Data Lake's going to kill it. The data mesh is going to kill MDM. Data fabrics, oh yeah, it killed MDM a couple of months ago, FYI, and now it's AI. In case you didn't know. Well, what do all these things have in common? Well, in fact, it hasn't actually happened. Is MDM still relevant? Yes, it is, because this charming dude says so. This is a line. MDM has transitioned from a nice-to-have to a must-to-have and is a foundational component of any digital transformation initiative. I wrote that while at Gartner, because of what I saw. In March of 2020, and we can all remember what was happening in March of 2020, things started to go a little haywire on the planet. And I thought for sure I'm a Gartner analyst, and I'm taking these inquiries every day, and I'm talking to CIOs and CDOs. And I thought for sure that I was going to need to find a new job. Nobody's going to want to talk about MDM because MDM has been the P2 thing forever. It's been the priority 2 thing. It's been the thing we'll get to. We've been kicking the can on MDM for a while. And oh, well, there's a global pandemic now, so I guess it's going to have to wait. I was totally wrong. What we saw through the pandemic was CDOs not running away from MDM. They ran to it. And we're seeing this now with ML. I was just talking to somebody from UNC Health who was talking about, well, we want to do ML, but when we shine a light on the data, we see how bad it is, and we can't actually leverage the power of ML because our foundational data around patient or provider is so bad. So when the pandemic hit, supply chains started to break, customer behaviors pivoted overnight, things changed. There was a new normal that is now going to be the new normal tomorrow because things are changing faster than they've ever changed. But what data leaders figured out is that they needed a solid foundation of master data, customer data, asset data, employee data, patient data, provider data. And if you want to pivot, if you want to repair a supply chain, if you want to change how you interact with your customers, you need to know who your customers are. Shocker. Right? So instead of running away from MDM, what we saw in the pandemic is companies running to it. That hasn't stopped. I use digital transformation as the kind of the wrapper here, but it could be OpenAI. It could be your supply chain optimization. It could be your ERP consolidation. Insert large-scale transformational initiative here. It doesn't matter. If you want to press the accelerator and have your engine respond, the data needs to be squared away. It just is. So it's no longer a nice-to-have. It's a must-have. But also what I found, and I've been researching this more and thinking about this a little bit more, is there's a little bit of a paradox that exists. Part of the kind of the pendulum swing that we all live and breathe every day at these large companies is centralized, decentralized, business autonomy versus business control, and how do we solve all of these things? And what I have figured out through my addition of gray hair over the years is that there's a little bit of a paradox here. The more we want businesses to operate individually, or functions, or departments, or dare I say, domains, to operate independently and to have the autonomy to respond quickly to change, the more we do that, the more we need MDM. Why? Because if your CEO asks how many customers do we have, there's only one answer. There's only one answer. So I heard this earlier at a customer panel, and I believe it was our #1 data influencer, the winner of the CDOIQ, the 100, where she said, the CDO of Colgate, where she said, it's a combination. It's not an either or. It's not decentralized versus centralized. It's not federated versus whatever. It is both. And if you want to do both, you need MDM. It's not an either or, it's a both. So the more freedom we give the business units, the more mesh-like we may get. And I can talk about mesh all day long, by the way. Not a bad thing, but maybe a separate topic. Put a beer in me and things will get interesting. But the more freedom we give the business units, the more we need that MDM. Because again, if your VP of procurement asks how many suppliers do we have, the answer cannot be, and trust me, because I've tried this, it depends. Who's asking? So that's why we need MDM. It's not going anywhere. So here we go. Thank you, AI. Now we can have all of these slightly not quite exact copies of copyrighted images that because that's not who you think that is. Nor was the last one Mel Gibson either. This is a guy that just happens to look a lot like Mel Gibson. But thank you, AI. The future of MDM is bright because it has to be, because that's where we're going. We're going to this hybrid world of centralization and decentralization. There are economies of scale that exist in centralized patterns that cannot exist in decentralized patterns. There is a reason why network architectures center around hubs. There's a reason why airlines have hubs. There's a reason why centralized patterns exist. And all of one or all of the other is a bad thing. There's going to always be a little bit of both. There's a few themes that we're going to talk about today. One thing, please keep in mind, the grounding thing that is going to be changing MDM, the future of MDM that I'll talk about today, is being driven and accelerated by technology. Okay? However, MDM is inherently a discipline. It is a discipline first, a technology second. It is a way of managing data. People, process, technology. So, please keep that in mind. It would be I would be breaking my MDM analyst Hippocratic oath if I didn't mention that it was a discipline, because it is. But a lot of the things we're going to talk about today are around technology. Now, ultimately, this is about the business. This is about business outcomes. You've heard this over and over again. This is another one of these things that I think we've kind of struggled with. But there's an amazing synergy happening right now, because not only is the technology evolving, I would argue the technology is evolving because the business is evolving. So as the business evolves, as the business needs more flexibility, more autonomy, more speed, more agility, more adaptability, the technology is adapting to do that as well. So that's one of the key themes. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how MDM is evolving to meet those business needs. And we'll talk lastly about the people and process changes, but we're going to talk a lot about technology, just because that's the lightning rod here. It just is. There's a few key themes that I'm really excited by and that I think will be that will keep the wind in the MDM sails, as it were. One of them is ongoing digital transformations. Those have not ended. I would argue that digital transformation is not even a program. It is about creating a data-driven culture that can easily adapt to change. To me, that's what a digital transformation means, right? The ability to adapt to change quickly. These things are not going away. Digital transformations that started in 2020, 2021, they're only like halfway through. When I was a gardener, I would talk to people who were doing these ERP consolidations of 30, 40, 70 ERPs. And you can ask any SAP consultant in the room, do these things happen in a year or two? No. That's what I'm going to be in my next life, I think. Theme number 2, business flexibility and adaptability. Not changing. The business needs speed. It needs to be adaptable. It needs the flexibility, because this is what we've learned over the last 3 years. We're not going back to these rigid, monolithic infrastructures, systems, processes that cannot adapt to change, because we learned our lesson. Hyper-personalization. This is something not talked about at this conference, but I believe it will be increasingly true in the world of MDM. As we are conscious when we go to the grocery store about what ingredients are in an item, we also want to know how that item was sourced. We would want to know who picked the coffee bean. We want to know about who handled the fruit. Are they being paid a living wage? I want to know everything about stuff I'm putting in my body. I want to make sure that the people I'm giving my business to are treating their employees fairly. This is all coming. I do actually think the blockchain will play a role here. Yes, I said it, blockchain. We'll talk more about that, but this idea of hyper-personalization, this MDM will sit at the core of this. Whether it's product-related data or whether it's data about sustainability, about how a company operates or how they treat their employees. Lastly, business interconnectedness and ESG. We live in an increasingly interconnected world. We saw this in the pandemic. We saw this with the supply chain disruptions. It's the butterfly effect. What can happen to one small company over here can impact a lot of other companies over here. A ship getting stuck in the Suez Canal can bring an entire global shipping operation to its knees. We live in a hyper-connected world. As a part of that, we also are increasingly conscious of ESG. Why am I kind of equating these things? Because I think that to operate in a more sustainable way, to operate in a more scalable way, I think we're going to start to share more data than we ever have before. We're going to need to share data more than we ever have before. Because to see across those supply chains, we're going to need to share data. There was a fantastic presentation yesterday by Simone Steele talking about sustainability and how hoarding a lot of data is harming the planet. And we're behind a lot of that. We do a lot of that. It depends on how you define dark data, and it depends on how you define use, but by some conservative estimates, 50 to 70% of data sitting in data centers is dark. It's collecting dust. And there's other data to suggest the data centers produce more greenhouse gas than the airline industry. A big way that we can help avert some of this within our community is to share data. You've got a record for Acme. You've got a record for Acme. Everybody's got a record for Acme, or maybe Verizon or AT&T or some other large company. And if I can Google the information for Acme Incorporated, and we're all doing it, it's not a competitive advantage. Why are we all storing this data individually over and over and over and over again? It makes no sense. Makes no sense. There's actually one company in Europe, it's called CDOIQ. They're a data consortium. What I'm talking about is creation of consortiums, and MDM sitting at the heart of data consortiums, where there's shared governance and shared stewardship of commonly used data, shared data, aka master data, for suppliers, for some of the biggest manufacturing companies in Europe. They're leveraging this service called CDOIQ. That's one example of something that I think will be increasingly important in the future of MDM, sharing data. Because why we're all managing this data largely the same, and we are. If you think your data validation, data verification processes are like Snowflake, they're probably not. Because I've seen it. I've seen it. I came to this kind of conclusion about data sharing and data consortiums. I was sitting in the office of the chief procurement officer of a Fortune 100 high technology company. And she says to me, we were talking about supplier onboarding suppliers. She says to me, Malcolm, I've got a problem with our onboarding. It doesn't happen fast enough, and the tasks that we do are repetitive, and I happen to know that my biggest competitor uses this supplier already, and our biggest competitor has already validated and verified and vetted this supplier. If it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me. How do we leverage that insight? That's data sharing, and it's sharing of governance as well. So, everything okay?
We're good.
Right on. So the future of MDM, a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about today are applicable in the world of data quality, data governance, other systems. But really, what we're talking about is this spectrum, and we're on it. The horse is out of the proverbial barn. We're going from over on the left to human-driven, human-defined, human everything, to the right towards the machines. The machines will play an increasingly important role in how we manage and master and govern data. We're somewhere in the early stages here, what we called at Gartner augmented data management, where we use things like OpenAI and other tools to assist humans in their goal to wrangle all of this data. But this is where we're going with MDM. I'm so glad I'm entertaining you, Scott. Because he set the bar. Scott Taylor set the bar. I'm just trying to get a crumb. But we're on this spectrum, and we will increasingly be moving over to the right. What does this mean in the world of MDM? Well, it means things like using OpenAI to help suggest better match patterns, using LLMs to suggest data models. There's a whole slew of things we can talk about here. It is not only data quality, but it's also data management, how we define MDM, how we use MDM, even integration patterns. But this path is what we're on, and we're going towards it. This is the march towards the future. But really, when we talk about AI, I actually did this presentation a few months ago, even before things totally blew up with OpenAI, so I feel a little bit validated here. But if we can use the internet to train a large language model, we most certainly can use our own internal data to do it. So if we can use the internet, which is, by the way, not known as a bastion of data quality, right? The internet is not, it's like, ooh, the internet, wow. Wow, this is where I want to go to my kids to learn grammar and diction? No. But somehow we're able to use that as a training set and produce a product that doesn't get hung up on the difference between customer or account or slight misspellings. Somehow we're able to overcome these mountains that we've never overcome before. Now let's imagine a future where we're using our own data. Or maybe we are actually partnering with other companies to create relatively large training sets. Maybe we're not all, the Dells and Ciscos and Walmarts of the world. Maybe we're a small regional bank, but we start partnering with other regional banks using synthetic data to create these training sets that we can allow MDM to basically answer any question, where MDM is able to answer questions like, what is master data? What's being shared? What's not being shared? What's the best MDM implementation style? Who should be able to update a record? What should my data governance policies be? So this is not a reach at all. With the kind of productization of OpenAI, I've been talking to a lot of data professionals, and it went from this idea of this augmented data management, this world of augmented data management. We've been talking about at Gartner for several years. It was all of a sudden, it was like, aha, I get it now. I see it. I can see it. But really, what does this all mean? It's the data fabric. And I am the last guy to wave a buzzword flag. I really honestly am. We make too many new words. We create too many new stuff that it doesn't need new words and new stuff. So I'm the last guy to wave that flag. But what we're talking about here really is the data fabric. And what is a data fabric? We've been using the phrase data products a lot in the last couple of days. I don't think we really kind of understand what that means. But a data fabric is a data management architecture where the data itself is used to inform the classification and use of data. Data informs the classification and use of data. So imagine today you're a data steward and you're looking at two records, Acme versus Acme LLC, right? And you're like, is that one thing, is that two things? Are these things, well, maybe I'll do some Google searches, maybe I'll send the record over to Dun & Bradstreet, maybe I'll do some other stuff to it. But you're looking at that data in one point in time. You have no context about who created the Acme record, under what situation, you may know what source it came from. You may know this one's from Salesforce and this one's from somewhere else. But you're really kind of driving blind. In the future of a data fabric, every little nugget of metadata that refers to those two records will be accessible via ML, where the system will know. The system will know what condition was it created, for what process, was it associated with a successful transaction or failed transaction? Did revenue get recognized for Acme LLC? Did it get recognized for Acme Co? How? And on and on and on. So no longer will data stewards be driving blind through the data fabric. They will have access to this information, and I would argue 80 to 90% of data stewardship tasks will be automated vis-a-vis the data fabric. Now, where does MDM fit in all this? If you were in a presentation yesterday through our friends at Microsoft and clued in, you would have heard the use of some presenters talk about a semantic layer. Okay? This is not the semantic layer as you know them today. Semantic layers today are highly analytical, exist at a schema level only. I could go into a lot of other details about how semantic layers operate today. Right now, actually, Dave Mariani from AdScale is giving another presentation about semantic layers. But this is a new semantic layer, where at a field level, at a record level, at a schema level, data will be semantically linked and augmented through what Gartner calls active metadata. And by the way, this is one of their graphics. Thank you, Gartner. Through active metadata, where the data, through the metadata, will say, OK, how is this data being used? Who created it? What's the workflow it supports? Where these minor differences of like Acme Inc. versus Acme LLC will be trivial. Trivial. But MDM is still going to sit at the foundation of that. But MDM, as we know it, will fundamentally change. It will be deeply embedded into not only analytical processes, but into the operational flows and processes today. When people are creating a new record in a CRM, there will be calls out to this layer here, this MDM knowledge graph, now enriched with semantics. Sounds like a breakfast cereal. Knowledge graph enriched with semantics. I mean, it's a knowledge graph. Yes, it's a knowledge graph, but it's not only a knowledge graph. It's not only a knowledge graph. But CRM systems will call out to this to understand, okay, does this record already exist? What's the next appropriate action for this record? I'm noticing a slightly different spelling here. Is it material? And on and on. But this is really about, to me, the data fabric. And we don't need to get into an argument about fabric versus mesh, because these are fundamentally two different things. The data mesh is an analytical paradigm for analytical use cases. And if you tell me that it's for operational use cases, I would refer you right back to the first pages of Mock's book. Which says it is an analytical paradigm. This is operational and analytical. MDM is inherently operational. This is about the correct data to be consumed by business applications like CRM systems and ERP systems. So I am bullish on the data fabric. Data mesh, okay. Is this just another shiny object? You were the guy that 5 minutes ago was poo-pooing Hadoop and big data and all this other stuff. No, this is not another shiny object. It's not. Hadoop is still looking for a business case, and OpenAI is being used by high schoolers to complete their homework. So this is not just another shiny object. But the reason why it's not is because speed and scalability are critical. There is a new normal when it comes to business. We need to be able to pivot quickly. We need to be able to respond quickly. We need to adapt to changing business needs. So, speaking about capabilities, again, I warned you that I was going to take kind of a technology-centric view here. In my last year with Gartner, I was the lead author of something called the Critical Capabilities, which in essence, without sounding too egocentric, is the definition for what is and what isn't MDM in the market. We can have a separate conversation whether that's valid or not, but critical capabilities of MDM, if you ask me what will they be in another 6 or 7 years, we'll talk about them. These are them, but we're going to dive into more detail. Adaptive MDM. Adaptive data governance. What do these things actually mean? Not a buzzword. Adaptive MDM, adaptive governance, adaptive data management acknowledges that context matters. The way that sales looks at data is different than the way that finance looks at data, and they're both right. They can both be right. They're at a functional level, and how they view the world, maybe we can call them domains. That's fine too. These domains can look at the world slightly differently. There's another view that exists at cross-functional and enterprise-wide. There are multiple ways to slice and dice data. As analytics people, we know this, group by, sort by, any way you want. But there are multiple ways to look at data, and every one of them is valid. And we need to be able to look across and support all of those views, all of those uses of data. The hard part of taking a highly adaptive approach to governance and MDM, which in essence, folks, multiple versions of the truth. Multiple versions of the truth. We've always known this to be true. Yet, I can't tell you how many days of my life I've lost as an MDM leader bringing everybody into a room and the round table where we bicker about customer definitions. You probably experienced it, where you bring sales and finance into the room together to like, hey, we need to align on a customer definition, and you can't. I've been there. Painful. I've been there. The fact is they're both right. For those use cases, they're right. That's what adaptive MDM is, multiple versions of the truth. Now, the hardest part here is going to be governance. It's governance. It's not the technology. Because today it's hard enough for companies to come up with one set of business rules for the entire enterprise. In the future, we're talking about N sets of business rules. Thank goodness we have our robots to help. We have our OpenAIs and our LLMs and our neural networks and all other forms of ML and AI to help actually start automating some of this stuff. Because if we can automate the creation of data models that are purpose-built for sales or marketing or for finance, we can certainly start to build some business rules to automate the governance of that data. When is it fit for purpose? When is it not fit for purpose? Who can adapt? Who can update it? Who can create it? AI is going to help go a long way to automating some of these policies in the future. So that's adaptive data governance and data modeling, or MDM. In-situ data management, or data matching, what does this mean? For a long time, MDM, yes, kind of classic hub pattern, where you bring a lot of data into this hub, and then you match it, entity resolution, where these probabilistic algorithms look at every possible pair of values in a certain data set. Unbelievably compute intensive, extremely resource intensive. But I would argue very limiting, because what we had to do was take an MVP approach to what we considered master data. We had to say the minimum amount of data to allow us to do that matching and have it not take 3 weeks to run. right? Which put unnatural constraints on requirements, I would argue. In the future, particularly in a fabric-enabled world, matching will happen where the data sits. And what will happen in a centralized hub is where the business rules, the configuration rules, those policies will be maintained in some form of the centralized hub, but where the data sits, where the data sits. We will connect to data instead of collecting data. It will allow for levels of scalability that are not present today, that will allow us to look at master data differently. It will allow us to expand the boundaries of historically what has been master data. Doesn't mean that everything is master data, because not everything is shared. But this will open the door. Matching data where it sits will open the door to drastically expand the scope of these programs. I'll give you an example. Run a knowledge graph today against any of your data, if maybe you're B2C, and you will find relationships that exist in the data, maybe even family-type relationships. I have a blended family. I have people that don't have my name that live in my house, or my family is all over the world, right? You can find relationships. Historically, in the past, we may have excluded those from master data. We wouldn't have said, oh, that's master data because it's not relevant for this one attribute, for this one customer. But we can expand into these new attributes, new relationships, a broader understanding of what we've historically defined as master data. So that's cool. This one's kind of a layup. Data catalogs, data governance platforms, and MDM will need to be deeply integrated. Some vendors will sell you one thing or sell you a suite of products. Other vendors will sell you best-of-breed solutions to do either. But in the future, they will need to be deeply connected. Data catalogs will be cataloging everything. MDM will be applying business rules and data governance policies to a subset of data that is widely shared in your organization. That's what MDM is. However, in this world of deeply connected data catalogs and MDM, what we're going to see is I need to take a second. We're going to see governance policies increasingly being managed in these data governance platforms. I would argue today that they're fairly light on data governance policies. Some access policies, some controls, some definitions, glossary, a few other things. But MDM is inherently about both definition of governance policies, but also enforcement of governance policies. So that's going to be the future. These systems need to be deeply tied together. I already talked about external data sharing. I think this is going to be transformational. We don't talk about it much today because our lawyers won't let us do it. Go to any lawyer and talk about, well, I want to share data. I want to create a data marketplace even. You can talk about data marketplaces. I love the idea. But, well, you can't because I'm a lawyer. I'm going to tell you can't. But I think that there is gold in these hills. I already talked about the use case where we're all managing data for insert large company name here. And if it's in the yellow pages or the white pages, that's not a competitive differentiator for you. Why we're not sharing more of that data is well beyond me. But this is not just these trivial data management use cases. It's to support that complex supply chain that I was talking about. It's to support me understanding where did my coffee beans come from. It's to support me understanding everything that I put into my body or the furniture that I put into my home. Our biggest challenge today with sharing is sharing the costs of shared governance. Historically, the cost of shared governance for these consortiums has been borne by entities like GDSN or Dun & Bradstreet or GS1 in the product world. The cost of that governance has been borne by them for a profit margin. And they have a right to exist, but they provide a value, right? And they drive a profit for it, and they manage governance rules for this shared set of data. In the future, I actually envision a blockchain-enabled world where the incentives to manage that data will be managed via some sort of blockchain. Where if I update a record, I will be compensated for the update of that record. Maybe even through some form of digital monetary exchange. Perhaps. Blockchain's not going away. It's just fallen out of favor because Shiba Inu and Dogecoin don't mean anything anymore, arguably, to most people. But I actually think the technology here is transformational, and what it will enable is the creation of these shared peer-to-peer data assets where you can publish, maybe even in something called an NFT, where you can publish the lineage, you can publish its governance policies, you can publish its quality standards, you can publish who created it, who updated it, and put that on a public blockchain and allow anybody to update it with the appropriate permissions, and when they update it, steward it to get paid. I think this is a brilliant idea. Somebody needs to come up with this. Well, I just did. Pay me. Sorry. Yeah, there you go. The Dogecoin. Yes, I only accept Bitcoin, but yeah. Capability, future capability, multidimensional hierarchies. This goes without saying. I mean, graphs already exist in our world. Today, I would argue the hierarchies we manage in MDM are relatively flat. 1 degree of relationship, but we need to be able to manage n degrees of relationships. Because we saw this in the pandemic. It wasn't my supplier that was the problem. It was my supplier's supplier. Right? How do we do that? Today, it's like, sorry, sorry, I don't know, I can't do that. But we need to do that in the future. Because there's risk of not understanding who your supplier is. And I know that sounds silly, but I'm not joking. That's how complex our supply chains are. And if there is risk in any of that chain, you need to manage it. Yes, AI will help with data stewardship. I do believe that increasingly, as part of these data sharing ecosystems that I'm talking about, my GoPro just died. Why? Oh, no, I got a half a recording. It's okay, Haley, don't worry about it. I actually think as a part of the creation of these data sharing ecosystems, that stewardship will increasingly be decentralized. Where if I'm updating that record for Acme Incorporated, I could be at a completely other company. And that's okay, because if we have shared governance policies, I'm going to know what the governance policy is for that record. As MDM creates economies of scale within an individual company, it can create economies of scale across multiple companies. Think about that. If we break a silo within a company, well, there's economies of scale to do that. We can do the exact same thing across multiple companies. Okay, lastly, how am I doing on time? Oh, I'm not too bad. Am I the thing, like last thing between you and an adult beverage, perhaps? One more All right. Some things to think about. Now here, folks, is where you're going to see me go on a few rants. Scott's like, you haven't been ranting already, you fool? Yeah. So I kind of borrowed a little bit of the MDM hype cycle kind of metaphor here. What's trending? Trending up, trending down. This is this white font here. Sorry, it doesn't look that good. Trending up, trending down, going away. Right? Product management, yes. Guys, it's not about slapping a product label on something. It's about the application of product management as a discipline to data management. That's what it's about. I don't care what you call a product. I don't care if you're implementing a mesh. It's about the integration of data, product management to data management. It's things like product lifecycle management. It's things like deeply understanding your customer needs, maybe even pricing, understanding your distribution model, creating marketplaces, managing products, hiring product managers. If you're a CDO and you're here, you need to be thinking about how to leverage product managers, because simply calling something a data product means nothing other than a data mesh, which is very, very specific. In a data mesh, data product is a very, very, very specific thing. And I've yet to see one company fully implement a data product as defined by the data mesh. I've yet to see anybody have automated governance. I've yet to see anybody have fully self-provisioned. I've yet to see anybody have data contracts widely used. In all of those three things together, that's what a data product is for a data mesh. So you can call a data product whatever you want. It's fine. It does, as long as it's solving a problem that your business stakeholder would otherwise pay for, and you're thinking about product management. That's the important thing. Other things here. I think we need to become more business consultants. We need to deeply understand our business. We need to be helping our business and consulting to our business. We need to know the business processes as well or better than the business knows them. Yes, finally, hopefully, we'll actually get in a position of creating ROI analysis, doing business cases all the time. Self-service governance, stewardship from within applications. I do see more decentralization and I do see more stewardship happening within source systems, within functional units. That's a good thing. I do think we will see more data sharing. And I think there is a world now where context drives truth. What's truth? Context, well, truth is contextually driven, right? What's true to sales and marketing is different than what's true to finance. Trending down, centralized data stewards. Centralized a lot of anything. We will continue to have centralized management of few things. Maybe supplier data, maybe material data, maybe even some product data. But generally, centralized data stewardship, I think, is going to trend down. Data literacy. Okay, brace yourselves. I think the concept of data literacy is toxic. It's toxic. What is the difference of literacy? Illiteracy. How can you start a conversation with somebody you call your customer with an assumption that the reason why they're not getting value from data or analytics that you provide is because they lack skills? Page 1 of Jordan Morrow's book, Be Data Literate, defines data literacy as a function of a gap in skills. If I built a widget, and I'm a product manager and I build a widget, it's this thing. Let's assume that nobody bought it, nobody wanted to use it, the user reviews on Yelp were horrible, everybody complained about the widget, nobody adopted it. As a matter of fact, I was giving it away for free, knock knock free, and somebody even went around to buy another widget from somebody else because they hated mine. They didn't like it. Would I, as the product manager, say, oh, poor literacy? No. I would say, I dropped the ball on the requirements. That's a faulty product. I'm not saying we don't need to train our users. I'm not saying our stakeholders don't need to know what the right tool is for the right job. I'm not saying that user training and user enablement and customer training and customer enablement isn't critical, because it is. But when we enter a mindset that literacy is a problem, that a lack of skills is the reason why people aren't using our products, I would argue that is a fundamental flaw, and I would argue it's also toxic. We need to understand why people don't want to use our products, or are not using our products, and are not getting value from our products. And do not assume it's because they don't have skills. That's my problem with data literacy. More on that to come. More on that to come. I could write an entire book on that. Data stewardship within MDM, gold master record, single version of the truth going away. Single version of the truth going away. Yes, I'm an MDM guy, I just said it. Really going away? Ah, data owners, oh boy. Again, maybe some pearl clutching going on. The idea of data owners drives me nuts. What does that mean? What does data owner mean? Is it the person defining a governance policy? Is it the person enforcing or implementing a governance policy? Is it the person creating the data? Is it the sovereign of that data? Maybe it's data about me. Is it a product manager creating a product about that data? Who are the owners there? Who are the owners? Under the classic DAMA definition of data ownership, it lines to roughly, the ability to define and enforce governance policies. But those are, I would argue, only two vectors of ownership of any master data. If data is widely shared, asking somebody to own it, own customer data, you've probably tried. How's that going? And by the way, moreover, when you sit down with your customers and say, oh, hi, after we fix your literacy problem, oh, by the way, hi, I'm your owner. I'm your data owner. Hi, Chief Revenue Officer. It's super nice to meet you. I own customer data. Who are you? And I don't want to sound mean, but like, we need to look at these things differently. Doesn't mean we don't need to define governance policies. Doesn't mean we don't need to enforce those governance policies. Doesn't mean we don't need these things. We do. But calling somebody a data owner, if I'm a CDO, I will never call anybody a data owner. Never. Sorry, that was a rant. Monolithic governance committees, centralized MDM, going away. To tie off, what does the future of MDM look like with a few other kind of high-level process things? Well, data first. I don't like data first. I don't like being data-driven. To me, that's kind of the idea of being ingredient-driven. If you were making maybe a packaged good, I don't want to be ingredient driven. I want to be customer driven. Does not start with an inventory. I can't tell you how many times when I was at Gartner, I would get calls from CDOs who were month 7, month 8 in the job. They said, yeah, well, you know, we're working on the data catalog, we're working on the data inventory, we've got half a glossary, we've got half our things defined, and I'm under pressure to show some value. Every day. Every day. Consultants love it. Consultants love it. It's the gift that keeps on giving. But that's because they're starting with this bottoms-up mentality that I need to inventory everything, glossary everything. Start with a need and work backwards from the need. Be agile. Work backwards from an outcome. I like the idea of calling master data shared data. I think that the master data term is loaded. I'm thrilled you're all here. Thank you for coming. But I think there's time for a mindset shift here. We could perhaps be calling master data shared data. Well, data literacy is the problem. That's our problem. That's why nobody wants to use my products. Nope. I would say we need to be more business literate. We, as data leaders, need to be more business literate. Data governance, I don't like that term. It's important. We need to do it. But I think of that as more data enablement. How do you pivot? So a lot of the things that I hope to see in the future, I'm modeling my behavior now. Start talking about enablement. Start talking about customers. Start being outcome driven. I talked about this already. You know, breaking company silos that exist across companies. Oh, and bonus, if you do that, if you start to look at MDM across corporate boundaries, maybe you can actually help save the planet as well. So we stop duplicating all this data incessantly that doesn't need to be duplicated, that isn't adding any value to anybody. That record for Google, you know, that is being replicated 1,000 times over in every single one of your CRM, every single one of your ERPs, over and over and over and over and over again. Governance is going to change. And I think kind of data observability actually is a little bit on the vanguard here. What I see data observability is kind of one of the first operationalizing of fabric-like patterns in data management. In the future today, we start from the bottom up and we define the rules. In the future, or today we define the rules, right? And we follow the rules. I'll follow the rules. In the future, I think we're going to base everything off of exceptions. And the data fabrics will tell us when governance rules have been violated or where there's a problem in the data or where there's low quality data. So I hope I saved a little bit of time. I think I did, yes. Yeah, and I blanked out in the middle there. I got like the blood rushed to my head. It's all good. Oh, okay. Well, I had to take a minute. Yeah. So are you ready for the future of MDM? And I know I went on a few tangents. And I know, oh, hi, Sanjeev. So glad you could make it. Any questions? Dan. Thank you, Scott. My biggest fan. Checks in the mail, Scott. Checks in the mail. Dan, you got a question. And I think we need to.
Dan. Who knows a thing or two about MDM?
I don't know anything. So in the context of intercompany data sharing, so if everybody's MDM is in the cloud and we have access to all the metadata, couldn't you automate some of that just simply through the metadata, and when somebody updates it, it'll pick it up in the metadata and then you could propagate it?
I've been telling MDM vendors for 3 years. While I was a Gartner analyst, I've been telling MDM vendors, you're sitting on a gold mine. You're literally sitting on a gold mine. I actually think the value of most vendors in the data management space, not only MDM vendors, but the real value of them will not be the recurring revenue associated to software seat sales. It'll be the data. I've been telling MDM vendors that they could easily aggregate, anonymize, and aggregate data sitting in their systems today to provide benchmarks around data quality. I used to get asked on a daily basis as a Gartner analyst, what does good look like? Where do I rank in my industry for data quality? MDM vendors are sitting on it. They already know. They run a match process. They know what's successful and they know what fails. They know who their clients are and what industries they serve. It would be hand wavy, caution, hand wave, relatively trivial to look across an install base of a data quality vendor or an MDM vendor or any data management vendor to start looking and to see, okay, here's the average data quality of this data set by industry. You could gamify this stuff. You could say you're number 37 out of 400 industries, so you're great, but you're number 399 out of 400. So like the money in these vendors and the money in these solutions is in the data. Because in the case of MDM, we've been collecting this stuff for years. We've been stewarding it for years. We've been making decisions about what's good and what's bad for years. So it's a different way to think. But I hope that answers your question. Does that answer your question?
So the short answer is yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, of course, again, lawyers, right? Oh, we can't because that's against our user agreement, and we can't. But like, for years and years and years, marketers have been aggregating and anonymizing data. Synthetic data, I think, could play a huge role here. You could take these data sets.
Folks like D&B have been doing that for years. You can only
Well, that's exactly right.
access our information if you contribute to our information.
Right.
If this benchmark would be helpful to you, then you have to contribute to it.
And that produces a great margin for Dun & Bradstreet. But in the future, that margin could be kicked back to all of us. If we are participating in these data sharing ecosystems.
It is a big mindset change, though, not just from the lawyers, but from the users. And the companies,
Absolutely.
you know, they're saying, well, wait a minute, I'm going to buy your software, and then you're going to access my data? I'm pretty sure I don't want you to do that. So there would have to be some synthetic data and anonymization built in. Because honestly, people don't really care about the Google record.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, I don't know if it was on, though.
Folks dialing in.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think it was.
I don't think it's turned
There
on.
we go. There we go. Okay.
Sorry. People don't care about the record for Google Inc. or whatever. They care about the aggregates.
Correct.
They care about the averages.
Yep.
They care about the summation of and the quality scores. And tell me not only what does good look like, but how do I get better? Where are my problem areas that I have to then go fix? And having the vendor be able to tell them that would be a huge value add. And really that is the big value is like, look, don't only just help me get my house in order, but help me figure out where I'm not in order.
Yes.
And they could do that, like a vendor data quality advisory service from the MDM vendor to the client. I think big companies would pay a lot of money for that. And they wouldn't need some third-party consulting firm to get in there and do the analysis.
Absolutely. These kind of small data sets could easily be created. You could train models that could easily predict success or failure of a given transaction for a given process flow. I mean, these are not that different. How we onboard new suppliers or onboard customers or do KYC checks at banks, these processes are largely the same. And the data, sorry folks, largely the same. Now, how you compete, the products you make, the services you provide, that's how you're differentiating. But yes, it's a mindset shift. And is it going to be the vendors in the data management space? I don't know. I see a lot of same old, same old.
Well, another thing is right now, for example, you could have a data steward go Google that company and look it up on their website.
Sorry.
That's not that complicated. In the near future, that would be something that a ChatGPT agent could do. Whenever you populate this record, just go out to Google and grab whatever you can off their website and automatically populate it into the master data record unassisted.
Absolutely right. Now,
that's not that complicated.
No, not at all. And I've been traveling the world this year talking about this stuff, and the common refrain is, "Oh, but AI hallucinates." Well, because these models were built to replicate the human language in creative endeavors. If we have specific training sets and specific models that are built for specific workflows, why do we assume that the hallucinations have to stay? There's already ways of mitigating this. The use of vector databases, the use of what are called RAG patterns to constrain the data that is used by an LLM to make decisions. This is already happening. So I see the idea of hallucinations it's just kind of noise and it'll go away.
So this
we
is
used
great.
to have to handwrite IP addresses into web browsers to get to a web page. We don't anymore.
I want to make sure we have time. We have lots of questions coming in online as well. Did I see one more in the room? There we go.
what you're talking about doesn't have to be ChatGPT, and frankly,
Evans, no.
it's happening today in the semantics world. When you talk about linked data, that's what that is. And to take linked data and apply it across data sets when you understand what they are, hugely powerful. So there's a head start at this, and you're just taking it to another level. I love it.
Yeah, so, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, and I made my most popular post to date, not like, yay, me, I'm popular, but it was me doing a selfie of saying MDM versus semantic layers. And it had more impressions than any other post I've ever had. That says to me that people are like, wait a minute, what is this? What's the difference? Semantic layers today exist at a schema level, and MDM exists at a field or record level. That's one of them. MDM is a data store. It's operationally used. It's not analytical. There's a few differences. I see these worlds coming together. I just told Dave Mariani, CTO of AtScale, that these worlds need to come together to do that stuff, this stuff. Hand wave.
That's actually a good segue. We have another question here. How can the future of MDM help enhance data modeling and prevent redundant schema and unfinished pipelines from sprawling?
Well, okay, so data modeling, there's a little bit of a kind of a, is data modeling dead? Data modeling's not dead. I mean, you see these conversations online, and it's not. It's not. Data modeling to me is about fundamentally understanding business processes and business architectures, not data architectures, business architectures, right? We've already seen the adaptation of new technology that fundamentally change and improve how we model data. Will we fully automate? For some things, I think, yeah. I think we will, because the systems will have far more access to information about customers or products or locations than any human ever would. We'll have access to information about the joins that need to exist way better than any human would. I see data architects being kind of the last reviewer of a auto-suggested data model. And that could happen in an MDM world, or it could happen in any world for that matter. So I see a future of data modeling where it's heavily augmented because these systems can consume a lot of data and can go way farther than humans ever could. Now, human will inject some of the human creative side of it, right? The business process knowledge, some of the historical knowledge about what works and what doesn't work, but yeah, they can be heavily augmented. Data pipelines failing, I mean, that's data observability. You should talk to my friend Sanjeev, he's an expert in it.
I've heard that.
Yeah, but I'm a believer. But I mean, like, I just had a conversation about data observability. I think if you're building technology to support a data observability use case, you're probably selling yourself short. Because if you can train that insight on understanding when a pipeline is going to fail, why it failed, and even remediate, why couldn't you train that on a procure-to-pay process or a revenue recognition process or any other business process that arguably, sorry folks, is worth infinitely more money than whether your ETL process didn't fail?
So do we have other questions here in the room? If got it, I have another one online. Dan.
Take the other one online. I don't want to.
Okay. I'm going to shorten this a little bit. Looking at how you see the approach to so many things changing, should a new MDM program be targeting where the industry will be in 5 years? Or should they try to do what seems like the best fit today and learn through today's approaches?
Oh, you're breaking up. What? You're breaking what? Man. So this is the Wayne Gretzky question. I'm Canadian, hockey. Go where the puck is going to be, not where the puck is. Yeah. It's both. Sorry, wrong answer. I mean, because if you ask me, hey, how do I implement MDM? How do I increase my success around implementation of MDM? I would say be very, very MVP driven. Be small, focus on 1 or 2 use cases, and that is not kind of the strategic big picture think, which you also need to do. So this is a juggling act. You need to be providing value today, now, solving real problems now, but you need to be employing some incredibly smart data architects who know how to architect and build something that will be future-proof. I'm not saying that's easy, but you need to do both. It's not either or. It's not decentralized versus centralized. It's not today versus tomorrow. It's both.
All right.
Final question goes to Dan.
Final question, Dan Everett.
All right. So, you talked about centralization going away. I disagree a little bit. So there needs to be some level of centralization. I see it more as federated. and you've got to enable the flexibility in the individual business units. I agree on that.
Yep.
So how do you manage that balance between how do we decide what's centrally managed, how do we decide what we let the individual domain teams, for lack of however you want to describe it?
That is the classic, how is MDM defined, right? So I'm putting on my Gartner hat, and how I would do this is draw a 3-ring Venn diagram, right? Right in the middle, shared by everybody. Every process, every application, every system. On the outside, used in one system application process. Do whatever you want. Let's take your average CRM system. Hundreds of fields in a CRM, 90% of it not widely shared. Sales, knock yourself out. Do whatever you want, right? There is a middle ground that traverses some processes, but not all of them. That's also master data. I would argue that is also master data. But the answer to your question lies in, at what level do we have centralized management of data, and at what level do we have decentralized management of data? The data will tell us the answer to that question. AI will tell us the answer to that question because it will tell us when data is widely shared, when it crosses functional lines, whether that is enterprise-wide, cross-functional, or functional. It could be one of those three. It's not an either or. It's the three. So this is my problem with the data mesh, and it's those functional, cross-functional. It gets complicated in a data mesh. It's really complicated. But I love it at a functional level. I love domain centricity at a functional level. Thank you so much, everybody.
Malcolm, thank you very much.